Welcome. These are long, calm English stories designed for relaxed listening and natural language immersion. You can listen actively or simply let the stories play in the background. The Road Between Quiet Towns. The road did not have a name anymore. On older maps, it appeared as a thin gray line running east to west, connecting places that most people had stopped visiting. Newer maps did not show it at all. It was still there, though unmarked, cracked in places, narrowed by grass and time. The traveler stepped onto the road just after sunrise. He carried little: a worn bag, a bottle of water, a folded map printed many years ago. He was not in a hurry. The road was long, and the towns along it did not expect visitors. He had chosen this road because it was quiet. Cars did not pass here. There were no signs pointing toward attractions or landmarks. The only sounds were wind moving through tall grass and the slow rhythm of his own steps. The first town appeared before noon. It sat low in the land, built around a narrow square with a dry fountain at its center. The buildings were intact, but closed. Windows dark, doors locked, paint faded. A single shop remained open. Its sign simply read, "Supplies." Inside, the shelves were neat but sparse. A woman stood behind the counter, reading a paperback book. She looked up when the traveler entered. "You don't see many people on the road," she said. "No," he replied. "I like it that way." She nodded, as if that explained everything. He bought bread, dried fruit, and another bottle of water. They spoke briefly about the weather and the condition of the road ahead. Nothing personal, nothing unnecessary. When he stepped back outside, the square was empty again. He did not stay. By afternoon, the road rose slightly, giving a view of open fields and distant tree lines. Old fences leaned at uneven angles. Their wire rusted, but unbroken. Occasionally, a path branched off toward a farmhouse or a cluster of buildings. But the traveler stayed on the main road. This was how the road worked. It offered choices, but it did not insist. Near evening, he reached the second town. This one still had people. Children played near a shallow stream. a dog slept in the shade beside a grocery store. Someone had placed chairs outside a cafe, though no one was sitting in them. The traveler stopped for a meal. The cafe served soup and bread. The owner did not ask where he was going. People here seemed used to travelers who did not explain themselves. He spent the night at a small guest house. The room was clean. The window faced the road. In the morning, he left without waking anyone. As days passed, the towns grew farther apart. Some were little more than clusters of houses. Others were larger, with schools that no longer held classes and post offices that opened only twice a week. In each place, the traveler observed without interrupting. He noticed patterns. In some towns, people gathered near the road, as if waiting for something to arrive. In others, buildings turned inward, doors facing away from the road entirely. Once, he met another traveler. They passed each other without stopping. They exchanged a brief nod. That was enough. One evening, the road narrowed and entered a wooden stretch. Trees closed in on both sides, their branches forming a close canopy. The light changed, becoming softer, filtered. The traveler slowed his pace. Here, the road felt older. Stone markers appeared along the edges, worn smooth, their inscriptions unreadable. He wondered who had placed them here, and for what purpose. He camped beside the road that night, listening to insects and distant wind. Sleep came easily. In the morning, he found something unexpected. A sign. It was small, mounted on a wooden post. The letters were faded, but still visible. Next town, 12 miles. He had not seen a sign like that since the beginning of the road. The distance did not concern him. The fact that someone had bothered to place the sign did. The next town was different. It was arranged carefully, its streets straight, its buildings evenly spaced. Everything appeared maintained, but quiet. Too quiet. Curtains were drawn. Doors were closed. At the center stood a clock tower. The clock face showed the correct time. The traveler walked the perimeter first. He saw no people. Only when he reached the square did someone speak. "You can stay," a voice said. An older man stood near the tower, hands clasped behind his back. "We don't get many visitors," the man continued. "But we keep rooms ready." The traveler accepted the offer. Over dinner, the man explained that the town had once been a stop for traders. When the main highway moved south, the traffic disappeared. Most people left. Those who stayed, the man said, decided to keep things as they were. The traveler stayed 2 nights. On the second morning, he noticed that the clock tower no longer worked. No one mentioned it. When he left, the road widened again, as if relieved. Weeks passed. The traveler crossed rivers by old bridges, passed through towns that existed only as names on his map, and others that did not appear on the map at all. He learned the sound of his own footsteps. He learned when to stop, when to continue, and when to sit quietly and observe. Eventually, the land began to change. Hills gave way to flatter ground. The air grew warmer. The road smoothed, its surface less broken. One evening, he reached the final town marked on his map. It was larger than the others. Lights were on in many windows. People moved through the streets with purpose. At the edge of town, the road ended. Not abruptly. It simply blended into a wider street, marked with signs pointing in many directions. The traveler stood there for a long moment. Then he folded his map. He stayed in that town for several days. He spoke more than he had in weeks. He listened even more. When he finally left, he did not return to the road, but the road remained. Quiet, unmarked, waiting. And somewhere between the towns, the silence continued its slow, patient work. Welcome. This is a long, calm English story designed for relaxed listening and natural language immersion. You can listen actively or simply let the story play in the background. The last work shift. The ferry crossed the water slowly, as it always had. It did not need to hurry. The schedule had not changed in years, and neither had the number of passengers. On most crossings, there were fewer than 10 people aboard. Jonah stood near the railing, watching the shoreline pull away. The town behind him was small, practical, and quiet. It existed because the ferry did. When the ferry stopped running, the town would likely disappear. Jonah had worked on the ferry for almost 20 years. This was his final shift. He had not told many people. There was no announcement, no farewell gathering. He preferred it that way. The ferry was not a place for speeches. It was a place for routine. The engine hummed beneath the deck. The water moved in steady patterns, broken only by the wake behind the boat. Jonah checked his watch. Everything was on time. A woman sat near the windows with a bag of groceries at her feet. Two men stood near the center, speaking quietly about equipment deliveries. A young passenger leaned against the wall, headphones on, eyes closed. Regulars. Jonah knew most of them by sight, even if he did not know their names. The ferry docked smoothly on the far side. The ramp lowered with a familiar metallic sound. Passengers disembarked without hurry. Jonah stayed on board as the crew prepared for the return crossing. This route was simple. Back and forth all day. No variation, no surprises. That was why Jonah had taken the job in the first place. On the second crossing, fog rolled in from the east. It was not heavy, but it softened the edges of everything. The shoreline became less distinct. The water blended into the sky. Jonah adjusted procedures automatically. He had done this hundreds of times. The ferry continued without issue. At the midpoint of the crossing, Jonah noticed a figure standing alone near the front of the deck. That was unusual. Passengers usually stayed near the center, especially in fog. Jonah approached calmly. "Everything all right?" he asked. The man nodded. "Just watching. There's not much to see today." The man smiled slightly. "That's what I like about it." Jonah nodded and returned to his station. When they docked, the man was gone. The rest of the day continued in its familiar pattern. Crossing, dock, crossing again. At midday, Jonah ate lunch in the small break room. The table bore marks from years of use. Someone had taped an old calendar to the wall and never replaced it. In the afternoon, the weather cleared. On the second to last crossing, the ferry carried only 3 passengers. Jonah stood at the rail again, watching sunlight reflect off the water. He thought about the first day he had worked here. He had been younger, uncertain. The job had seemed temporary. It rarely was. The final crossing approached. The ferry left the dock with the same quiet movement as always. No one announced that it was Jonah's last shift. No one needed to. Halfway across, the same man from earlier appeared again at the front of the deck. This time, Jonah joined him. "You ride this ferry often?" Jonah asked. "Not usually," the man replied. "Just today." Jonah waited. "I wanted to be somewhere that still moves at a reasonable pace," the man continued. "Places like this are harder to find." Jonah looked out at the water. "Yes," he said, "they are." The ferry reached the far dock. The ramp lowered. Passengers left. The man paused near Jonah before stepping off. "Thank you," he said. Jonah nodded. The ferry sat empty for a moment before the crew secured it for the night. Jonah gathered his things slowly. When he stepped off the ferry, he did not look back. The water remained calm. The route remained the same. Tomorrow, someone else would stand at the railing, and the ferry would continue to cross the water just as it always had. Welcome. This is a calm English listening story for relaxed and practical language practice. The story uses clear, everyday English and natural pacing. The morning delivery route. The delivery truck left the warehouse at 6:30 in the morning. The sky was light, but the sun had not fully risen. Streets were quiet, and most shops were still closed. Maya checked the list on her tablet before starting the engine. 8 deliveries. 3 neighborhoods. 1 small problem already. The third address on the list was incomplete. Maya sighed quietly and drove toward the first stop. The first delivery was easy. A small package for a cafe near the train station. The owner was waiting outside. "Good morning," he said. "Good morning," Maya replied, handing him the box. She asked him to sign and wished him a good day. The second delivery was in an apartment building. Maya parked the truck, carried the package inside, and used the elevator. On the 4th floor, she knocked on the door. No answer. She waited 1 minute and knocked again. Still nothing. Maya checked the instructions. Leave at door if no answer. She placed the package carefully, took a photo, and returned to the truck. The third delivery was the difficult one. The address only showed a street name, not a building number. Maya drove slowly and looked for signs. She stopped near a small grocery store and went inside. "Excuse me," she said. "Do you know where this address might be?" The cashier looked at the screen. "That street is long," he said. "What is the name on the package?" Maya showed him. "Oh," he said. "That business moved last year. It's 2 streets over now." He gave her the new address. "Thank you," Maya said. She updated the tablet and continued. The next deliveries went smoothly. A bookstore, a flower shop, and an old office building. At each stop, Maya followed the same steps. Park, check the address, carry the package, confirm the delivery. At 10:30, traffic increased. Cars filled the streets, and parking became harder to find. At one address, Maya had to park far away and walk 2 blocks with a heavy box. She adjusted her grip and moved carefully. A man opened the door. "That's for us," he said. "Yes," Maya replied. "Please sign here." By noon, only 1 delivery remained. It was a house at the edge of the city. Maya followed a narrow road and checked the map twice to be sure. She arrived at the correct place and rang the bell. A woman opened the door. "Delivery," Maya said. The woman smiled. "Right on time." Maya handed over the package, completed the final step on her tablet, and returned to the truck. She checked the list again. All deliveries complete. Maya drove back toward the warehouse. The morning work was finished. Tomorrow, there would be another list, another route, and more deliveries to make. Maya drove back toward the warehouse at a steady speed. Traffic was heavier now, and she stayed in the right lane. At one intersection, the light turned yellow. She slowed down and stopped. When the light changed, she continued. As she approached the warehouse, her tablet made a short sound. New message. Maya parked the truck and checked the screen. One delivery had been marked as delayed. The customer had a question about the time of arrival. Maya opened the message and typed a short reply. Delivery completed at 11:55. Package left with recipient. She sent the message and closed the app. Inside the warehouse, another driver was unloading boxes. Maya greeted him and returned the truck keys to the desk. "Busy morning?" he asked. "Yes," Maya said. "But everything is finished." She checked the fuel level and wrote a short note about the route. Then she cleaned the inside of the truck and placed the tablet on the charger. Before leaving, she looked at the board on the wall. Tomorrow's routes were already posted. Maya found her name and read the list. A different area. New addresses. She put on her jacket and stepped outside. The day was warmer now. The city was fully awake. Maya walked toward the bus stop, thinking about the next morning's route and the packages she would deliver. Tomorrow, she would start again.